Thank you for staying with us. Now let's get the show started. During the week, the federal government introduced an excise tax of 10 naira per litre on all non-alcoholic, carbonated and sweetened beverages. You know what that covers. The federal government said the reason for the task is to discourage excessive consumption of sugar in beverages, which contributes to a number of health conditions, including diabetes and obesity. Well,
I see.
Nigerians are still talking about this. Today, let us see if we can get to the rationale for this excise tax. It's my pleasure to welcome the former Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and the current CEO of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, Mr. Muda Lawal. Why do I keep calling you Mr.
No, you
Muda
haven't
Lawal?
forgotten. You haven't forgotten the football
Muda
player.
Yusuf.
It's just as simple as that.
I don't know why. I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. It's because you never
Mr.
really
Yusuf.
forgot the Green Eagles, not Super Eagles, no, Green Eagles of the 80s. Same teammate with Segun Odegbami.
And Segun Odegbami is my tennis partner every Sunday morning.
But today, well, we knew him as a footballer.
Big Sheg.
Yeah.
He plays good tennis as
Yeah,
well.
we still have another guest. I don't know if that one is also your tennis. Just saying.
Go ahead, introduce him.
Okay, well, Tayo Ogungbero joins us as well. He is He's a partner tax regulatory and people services at KPMG Nigeria. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Good.
Okay.
A bird in hand. Let me start with Mr. Yusuf. When you heard of this tax, what in your mind was government driving at by imposing this tax and their sudden interest in the health of Nigerians?
Are you happy that government is even interested in our health?
Well, ordinarily, we should all be happy that government is showing interest in our health.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you wonder whether there is a proper appreciation of what the realities are on the ground. Because this issue, of course, has a medical dimension. There is the economic dimension or investment angle. There's also the welfare aspect of it. If there is any major challenge that we had as an economy and as a people in 2021, it was about high prices, high inflation. In some instances, some prices even doubled.
Yeah.
Even though we have the headline inflation, as quoted, as reported by the NBS at 15.4% in November. That was the latest we have. In some cases, particularly when you look at the basket of goods that the ordinary people consume, you are talking about between 30% even to 100%. I watched your program, the Community Report, was it yesterday? And I saw the lamentation of the average Nigerians. So what I'm saying is that we need to worry about the welfare of the people. Health is important. Nobody's diminishing that. But the pressure on the average Nigerian is already heavy enough.
Purchasing power.
Yes. If you cannot help to lift the burden, you should not add to it at this time. Because you are talking about, adding a lot more tax or imposing tax so that it can discourage people from consuming a particular product. The reality is that the prices are already up. I mean, if you look at all these soft drinks and things like that, the prices have gone up by close to 50% in the last 1 year. So from the point of view of the welfare, I don't think the timing is good. I don't think it shows sufficient demonstration of the sensitivity of the plight of the people. Because we are talking about not just these soft drinks, we are talking about beverages. So even all these things that parents buy and put in the baths of their children, chocolate drinks and all these things will be subject to tax,
Well,
additional tax.
But they're not carbonated.
No, they are not.
It says carbonated.
Carbonated is there,
Yes.
even if there is no sugar. Once it's carbonated, it's part of it. Non-alcoholic and sweetened beverages. And don't forget, this is going to be managed by the Nigeria Customs. I know what it is when Customs is managing this kind of thing. And it is targeted, more importantly, because there's also the investment part of it. This is targeted at domestic production.
Dr. Yusuf, we'll come to some of those details. But Mr. Ogungbero, do you share the same view that it's coming at a wrong time, or that it's even coming at all?
I perfectly agree with him. And it appears that government does not appreciate what is really going on in the economy. Apart from the fact that cost of basic food items is currently beyond the reach of an average Nigerian. Nigerians, especially in the cities, have turned to soft drink, beverage, a carbonated one in particular, as a means of livelihood, whereby with 300 naira or 250 naira, you buy a bottle of soft drink with 100 naira sausage. You are done for most part of the day. Now, with the introduction of this levy, definitely the price will be affected one way or the other. There are three options. The producer can absorb it, and I doubt, because soft drink industry is a thin margin industry. Their margin is very thin. So the likelihood is that if they cannot absorb it, they push the price to the consumer. And we know that in Nigeria, we buy things in the multiples of 50 naira. Currently, it is now 150 naira. If they put 5 naira on a 50 centiliter of carbonated drink, the price is not going to stay at 155 naira. It's definitely going to move to 200 naira. So it is a recipe for another inflation. And unfortunately, it is focused at the lower strong of the country.
Yes.
It's really not at the right time. But let me also say that I feel for the government. I really feel for them. Let's face reality. Government does not have money. In the current budget, the expected revenue realistically to be generated is barely 15% of the total expenditure. And government has said that they are not going to do anything to the expenditure. To use their word, they said controlling expenditure is not viable, which means the only alternative you have, like the Minister of Finance has been saying frequently, that our problem is how to generate revenue. So what it means in essence is that government is looking at all places to get this revenue from. I think they've tried in subjecting the rich to tax through the taxation of luxury items. Now it is now time to turn to the poor. Well, so I share with the sentiment, and it's really unfortunate.
But then one of the issues that a number of people have raised about this whole tax thing, Mr. Ogungbero, is that there is still a significant number of people that are not within the bracket, especially in the private sector, maybe the unorganized private sector, the micro, small, and medium enterprises. And available data shows that we have something in the region of 40 million of them. So I'm wondering, do you think it would be necessary to tax the lower echelon, so to speak, if we were able to capture the micro, small, and medium enterprises within that bracket?
I hear you, which is what you're trying to say. If I can understand it very well, it's because of our low tax to GDP ratio. And it's basically due to the quantum of citizens that are not currently paying tax. So you are using an indirect form of taxation to bring them within the tax state, which is what is an acceptable practice in most developed economies. Is understandable. However, in doing it, you need to also take appropriate cognizance to say these policies that have been introduced, to what extent will yield the expected result? Now, like I said, you are going to impose 110 naira on a 1 liter of carbonated drinks. What is the amount that government is going to get compared to getting these people to pay the taxes directly? Now, let's put it this way. Let us assume that government is expecting that they will get, I don't know, maybe 50 billion naira from this. But we should know that this tax is a levy. What I mean is a levy is that it becomes a tax deductible item for the companies. What it means is that once they pay the tax at the very top, they reduce their income tax payable. So what government should have waited to collect from the companies in form of companies income tax, they are collecting a part of it indirectly. So when you increase the levy or impose the levy and you start to collect the indirect tax, then you reduce the taxes payable by them. So it may turn out to be zero-sum game. Government may be the net loser out of this. Yes, you are trying to bring the people within the tax net, but the way you need to do is to find a way that anybody paying the tax, especially the people that are not within the tax net, they pay it directly now, which is find a way to bring them within the tax net through the personal income tax, not through this form of taxation that will all lead to reduction of tax payable by these companies. So it may be a zero-sum game. It may not achieve the intended result.
Okay. Well, Dr. Yusuf, the part where Mr. Nguero said government does not have money, so government is naturally looking for every opportunity, every available opportunity to raise revenue. You know that that's been something that government has been talking about for a while. Do you see any other option for government to go around this issue of raising revenue, as opposed other than taxing?
Well, there are already a lot of options. If you look at the Finance Act, quite a number of new taxes were even there. This is generating so much concern because it is touching directly on the ordinary people. And I think as a government, the government needs to be very sensitive to that. Now, if you look at the Finance Act, for instance, the education tax, it used to be 2%, it has been increased to 2.5%. There is also some other taxes, like tax on digital transactions, all these Amazon and the rest of them. These are also new things that have been brought into it. You see, the point is that even from a revenue perspective, this is not likely to yield much because it's going to affect demand. And once demand drops, the company income tax that these companies are paying will drop. The VAT will drop. Meanwhile,
so is it therefore counterproductive?
Yes, you have created, and in addition to that, you have created a major social problem because the social cost of this is high. And even I dare say, even the political cost. Election is next year. And things like this have a way of also impacting the disposition of even the electorates. And when you talk about taxes, because I've heard this thing being said by many people that we are not adequately taxed, that tax to GDP ratio is one of the lowest in the world. I've heard that argument. But just permit me just to run through some of these taxes that we are already paying. We have the company income tax. We have the value-added tax. You have the capital gains tax. That's if you sell an asset, whatever you make, you pay a tax on it. You have the tertiary education tax, which is the education tax, which has been reviewed now from 2% of your profit to 2.5%. You have technology tax, which is imposed on banks, telcos, maritime, and all of that. You have stamp duties for all these transactions, electronic transactions, and all of that. You have import duty that you pay if you import anything. You have export duty. Then you have this excise tax. Then you have this science and tech levy. Now, only recently, you have the police fund levy. You have the tertiary, that is now in the National Assembly, it's another tax. Tertiary health care levy. That's also going to be levied on companies. You have the science and engineering levy. This is just at the federal.
There's no end to it, is there?
Then at the states, you have the property tax. In Lagos, you pay the land use tax.
Yes.
You have sales tax or consumption tax, in addition to VAT. You have entertainment tax, all these event centers. There are taxes you pay for every event that holds on your premises. You have entertainment tax in some locations. You have environmental tax. Some of these local governments, they go around telling you that because of the environment, you have to pay a tax. You know, you have mining tax, you have signage and advert tax. You have mobile advert tax. You have produce tax. All these guys that barricade the road when you are carrying something from one state to the other, they also demand some taxes from you. You have the abattoir tax. You have infrastructure maintenance tax. If you talk to people in Lekki houses and all of that, there's a levy you pay for infrastructure maintenance. So we have a lot, and even at the local government, you have about 20 different taxes, including radio tax. There was a time when I was still at the LCCI, a member of the chamber, I was asked to come and pay about 350,000 naira TV tax. How much is the television?
I wonder.
So the point I'm making is that
For how long did you have this
there's a
TV?
point that we need to rationalize this.
Okay.
That should even be the conversation.
No, Dr. Yusuf.
Not even bringing additional burden of tax on people.
Dr.
These are the conversations we should be having.
You used to be DG at the Lagos Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
Let's look at the manufacturer's angle now.
Yes.
We have looked at the consumer's angle.
Yes.
How will this affect the manufacturer?
Well, naturally, it will have a very serious adverse effect on them. Because if there is any segment of the economy that is really struggling to survive, it is manufacturing. Apart from the high-end segments or players in that sector, you know, the multinationals, they have their own issues as well. Those at the medium to small enterprise level are struggling because the environment is extremely difficult for them. And when you are in that business, it's not a liquid investment that you can just exit and say you are moving to something else. Like you are in financial markets where you have that flexibility. Once you have your machineries for a particular product, you are stuck there. And here is the government talking about lifting 100 million people out of poverty.
How?
We are talking about generating more employment. And yet, this segment of the economy that is already burdened, they are burdened by high energy costs. They are paying for gas in dollars. The cost of diesel.
Dr.
Hold on.
I'm coming there. I want you to speak a little more on that, just
Yes.
for a little moment, because on the one hand, government is talking about enabling business, the business environment. On the other hand, we are having these issues. Now, one of the questions that has played on my mind, and I will probably raise this with Mr. Ogungbero as well shortly, but one of the questions that has played on my mind is, there are economists in the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning who definitely will understand some of these things and the implication of some of these decisions. I also believe that in passing the Finance Act, which empowers government to take these decisions, the National Assembly committees that deliberated on it must have spoken with some economists here or there. I mean, I'm making that assumption because I don't think that members of the National Assembly will take such decisions without doing some consultations. What would you say would be the premise upon which these decisions were taken without considering some of these issues that you are raising?
Well, I don't think there is that level of consultation.
Really?
The depth of consultation on things like, I mean, look at the speed at which even the Finance Act was passed.
So
Look
you
at
think
this
that
speech.
the Manufacturers Association, for instance, was not consulted before?
Certainly not. Even there was a recent visit by before the passage of this budget and this Finance Act. The Manufacturers Association visited the president. And part of the issues they raised was this excise tax. Before then, I think there was some rushed public hearing, which I'm not sure many people were even aware. Because for you to pass this kind of thing, The whole idea of the democracy is that you should also organize a public hearing where you listen to those who will be affected. How many people are aware that there was a public hearing? And those who are even our representatives in the National Assembly, how many of them consulted their constituents?
Okay.
To say that, okay, this tax is coming. What do you think? Because that is the whole idea of representation in a democracy.
Okay. Let me ask Mr. Ogungbero, in taking some of these decisions, I mean, as you have said, government is between the devil and the deep blue sea. No resources, yet you have to take some decisions, especially that has to do with money and everything. What are the other options that you have seen? Well, Dr. Yusuf has talked about the fact that there are options. I think about 12 or 13 tax laws were adjusted to make up the finance bill, and with a significant number of provisions. So what for you are the options? Of course, you also know that government has said the only way we can balance out in the year 2022 is to borrow more to finance the budget. What for you are the other options other than this difficult tax that's been imposed?
Okay. Thanks for that question. And let's get it right. There are no two ways to financing an expenditure. A family head knows that he has responsibility to pay his bills. And at the minimum, he will feed his children, the family, and provide social amenities based on his budget. So there are no two ways other than to get the money. Even at the moment, we are borrowing a lot from the international community. We will definitely have to pay at a point in time. Even if part of it will be written off in future, we still have to pay. Now, the only way out is just to find a way to bring the majority of Nigerians that are outside the tax net within the tax net. There are no two ways. And I like the way that he has listed numerous taxes that we have currently. When we check with most countries that have a high tax to GDP ratio, they have very few number of taxes. And what they also do is that they make it very simple for people to understand and comply with. And let me just give an example so that the viewers can relate with it, and permit me to use the example in the church. Your tax is just 10%. My mother that didn't go to school understands that 10% of her income is tight. All you now need to do is to convince her to pay. But she knows how to determine it now. If you have multiple taxation that makes it more complex, then people have a reason to try to evade. Of course, the government has introduced this one now. Definitely, quite a number of people will be looking for the way out. So our major challenge in Nigeria is how do we bring the underground economy within the tax regime? And one of the ways that I think it should be done, I will use it, is just to see, we need transparency. There are no two ways about it. If you collect tax, people want to know what the tax is being used for. And please permit me to use the example. I've been in KPMG for quite a while. I remember when, please permit me, Governor Raji Fashola was in power. He was making the governance so transparent that you can see the impact of revenue generation on infrastructural production, and now he was spending the money. And I can remember quite a number of people walked to our office in KPMG. And I was also in charge, whereby they met people like me to say that, look, I remember one guy that came to say that this man is doing something very good. I've never been paying tax. They can never catch me. I know how to do my business. But because he was delivering, he was providing value for revenue generation, he told me, I want to pay. And we assisted him in tax remittance. Today is within the tax net in Lagos State. And if you also notice what Lagos tried to do, using as an example, they will try to direct people's attention to any infrastructural facility or anything that is taking place, saying that taxpayers' money in action. So the way out, the surest way out is let people see that the taxes that are being paid, or in one form or the other, they can see how it is being utilized. And we will now make a reason for us to be able to bring more people within the tax net. There are no two ways about it. We need revenue generation to address the current situation, one way or the other. Whether we borrow, we're still going to pay in future. And somebody still have to pay that money, and it's going to form through taxation.
Okay. This talk about enlarging the tax net, we've been, I mean, you professionals have been talking about it forever, but we don't seem to see any concerted effort by government to expand that tax net. Instead, they keep either increasing taxes or threatening subsidy every other day. Today they say they have removed subsidy, they increased the price of petrol. Tomorrow they say they have not removed it. And this thing just goes on, or they increase the number of taxes that people have to pay. So, I mean, what is your advice to government regarding how they're going to achieve this expansion of the tax net?
We have our laws there, and that's a very good question. We have our laws there. But the issue is that we actually obey the law in default. Government needs to show political will in enforcement. Our law makes provision for the fact that if anybody evades us, it should be sent to prison if convicted. But as of today, I'm not aware that a single soul is behind bars for tax evasion. We remember the case of one guy in Europe that was alleged to have evaded tax. While he was arrested and the investigation was ongoing, he knew that this would be a very high price. He committed suicide, or alleged to have committed suicide, and he died in the prison. The price for non-compliance in advanced country is worse than committing a crime like killing somebody. So government needs to have that political will to go after income earners. And these are the big people that actually sponsor them for, we know them in the society and we know what to do. So it is just the political will to go after the people for them to come and pay the tax. Once you have the political will, the solution is there. And also, government just needs to deploy technology. We already have the technology in place that tracks people's income. Government knows how to move this money. Government knows everything. But putting the political will in place and going after the people that will pay the tax is actually the major thing. And for us, for government to really do it, you need to start from the top. I'm not going to start from where you are going to spend 80% of your revenue to collect 20%. You are going to spend your resource of 20% to go after the people that will pay the tax of 80%. To what extent is government committed to doing this in the right way, transparently? I think that is the only way. Now, if you are able to do it and get the people that are at the very top, get a few people who have not been paying tax, you identify them, you did the necessary thing, you prosecute them, then you send the message loud and clear to the common man on the street to do the necessary thing.
Well, Dr. Yusuf, he talked about transparency, especially of transparency, especially in the utilization of the tax to encourage or provoke those who have not been paying tax to pay. He also talked about transparency in the collection and remittances of the taxes. What's your take on those issues?
Yes, before I respond to that, let me also underscore one or two things that he said. In many other climes, particularly in more advanced societies, only about 15 to 20% of the people pay 80% of the tax. In other words, you make the taxes, particularly income tax, you make it as progressive as possible. So that those who really have the capacity to pay, you make sure they pay. This country is blessed by quite a number of billionaires. Go to our airports, go to Abuja, see the lineup of private jets.
But the question that one of the things
What
that
are
he
they,
raised,
who are those riding
one
those
of the
jets?
things that he raised about that is if people do not see that the taxes, the tax being collected are being utilized for public good, they are not encouraged.
Is that why you should be riding a private jet and you are not paying something that is commensurate? That is where they should start from. Not going to the market or going to people who are selling tomatoes and all of that, and be harassing them for tax.
You think that is not being done already? You think
no,
the people
no. It's not showing. How many of them are in the tax net? And many of them, it's not as if they have factories or something. Some of them are just briefcase guys who stays in some suits in hotels, and they are really wealthy. Don't you see the properties in Abuja? Don't you see the properties in Lekki Aziz and all of? Who owns them?
But we have
Are they
property,
journalists like
we have property tax.
Or are they
Dr.
manufacturers?
Yusuf, we have property tax. How can you say that they're
Where
not
is
being
it?
taxed?
How much are you getting from property tax? How much?
Well, maybe
You have the budget. How much is coming from property tax? How much is coming from people who are flying business class and first class?
Well, does it?
These are the people who should be paying the
Does
tax.
this also speak, Dr. Yusuf, to the transparency issue Mr. Ogungbero raised?
Well, you see, transparency is one thing. Commitment to the ideas of proper taxation, progressive taxation, is another.
But we don't know that these people you are talking about do not pay tax because we don't have that information. That's why I'm asking, do you think...
If they are paying, you will see the data. I mean, I've had some reports of how many people who are paying up to a million naira in tax in Lagos State and other states and all of that. The numbers are so few compared to the billionaires that we have around.
Mr. Yusuf.
So the structure and the strategy
Yes.
to get, because this is, they call it Pareto principle. You go after the few that can give you the largest results.
Yes. Mr. Yusuf,
That is the way to go.
the issue that Mr. Ogungbero raised is very germane. It's because, I mean, what he said is something that we spoke about on this program at the time when Fashola was governor of Lagos State, when even Okada riders were asking for where tax offices were, that they wanted to go and pay their taxes. So, is it not therefore important that government itself should act in a way that will make people want to pay taxes?
Very important. I agree perfectly with it. Because it is a moral issue. If you're asking people to pay tax, you don't collect people's tax and you are buying SUVs and you have a long convoy of vehicles and all of that, and people see you spending lavishly. I mean, you see the structure of our budget. You see some of those budget headlines, catering, food, and all welfare, honorarium. See the number of figures that are there. These are the taxes that we are paying. So I agree perfectly that it's a moral thing. For you to demand money or tax from people, you must show evidence. Many of these people that are paying the tax, they still provide the services that government is supposed to provide for them. They provide it on their own. Some of them tar the road to their factories. And as citizens, you pay heavily by sending your children to private schools. Ordinarily, some of these taxes should be used to fund education.
Yeah.
So that you get quality education from the public school. But what is the situation now with primary and secondary school? If you don't go to private school, you can't get quality education.
Sure.
The same thing with health service.
We'll come to those other issues. But Mr. Ogungbero, Dr. Yusuf has raised issues around the private sector. How significantly do you think this and a number of those other taxes he has talked about that the private sector is subjected to, how significantly do you think it affects their operations, their ease of doing business, and eventually their capacity to pay significant tax to government?
Let us take note that tax is another cost to an entrepreneur, and tax impacts the bottom line. And we should also know that government is a very serious stakeholder in businesses, in providing the environment. However, you need the private sector to do it now. If the tax is so high, or you do not create a level playing field whereby the tax is considerate. If the tax is too high, then if the return that will come to the investor is not commensurate, then they will not take the initiative. It will just be at the level of, possibly, let's even use the case of the soft drink industry now. There's a likelihood that any other potential entrant into the soft drink industry will watch how this levy is going to impact the entire market. So when tax is very high, you are creating an environment whereby you may be indirectly discouraging investment. And when you are discouraging investment, there is not going to be business opportunity, there's not going to be employment opportunity, and taxes will come back very low. So tax is very significant, and it has to be seriously determined, especially in consultation with the people that are really the entrepreneur.
Do you think that was done? Do you think that there was a drill down to all the various sectors that will be affected? I'd like you to, explain some of those things. Dr. Yusuf has tried to do that, dichotomizing carbonated drinks from sweetened beverages and non-alcoholics and all of that. But do you think there were conversations around with those people who are involved in the production of these things to the effect that how it will affect them?
Okay, since the levy was introduced, let me put it this way, because some of them are quite KPMG's clients. We were aware of this intention more than a year ago or thereabout. Government has indicated intention that they would do this, and there were discussions. But it's just like at times when you are discussing with somebody, and the person is actually telling you, this is what I intend to do. The body language of the person is not that he's engaging with you, but rather is really telling you what he intends to do. So I would say there were discussions, there were short consultations, but whether government took it into consideration or not is another thing entirely.
Do you think that was done? Do you think there was any consideration from government side about how the industry would react?
I think they will have done some their own. Definitely, government will have done something. But when governments are determined to do something, or when they maybe let us say the need to generate revenue has overweighed the issue of whether they should do it or not. They will have realized that it's going to create some impact. They will have also done their own analysis. But like I said, they are really there's a desperation to raise to generate revenue. So I think they will have weighed the two options, and the final decision will have been to say, well, we may need to buy the bullet. Let's go ahead and implement it. Let's see how the economy will take it. If it becomes very tough, maybe 2-3 years down the line, they may reverse it.
What kind of reaction do you foresee, Mr. Ngwero, from the sector?
Like I said, there are 3 options. Number 1, if the manufacturer can absorb it, which I really doubt, if he can absorb it, then it is going to affect his further future investment. And any investment that he has done is going to affect the return that is expected. The other one is that if most likely, which is most likely, is not able to absorb it, he will pass it to the consumers. Once he passes it to the consumer, the price will go up. The consumption of soft drink will definitely come down. And when the consumption comes down, you can just imagine that it's also going to impact the level of capacity utilization. So those are the likely consequences. But the jury is out. Let us see how it's going to play out. But one way or the other, it's going to have a negative impact either on the manufacturer in form of return on his investment, or on the consumer in form of inability or the quantum of the quantity of something that will now be purchased, since the price will likely go up.
Now, let me just also add this. When we are talking about managing finances, it's not only about chasing people for revenue. It's also about cutting down on expenditure. We are not hearing much about what the government is doing to cut down on spending.
Well, government has said in response to that, I remember the finance minister also spoke about that, that look, the problem we have is not that of expenditure, it is that of revenue.
How valid is that? How valid is that? We have expenditure that is ballooning every day. The revenue cannot match up. We are incurring a lot of debt. And yet you say expenditure is not the problem? We have to interrogate that. We have the Oronsaye report. The report has been there for close to 5 or 7 or 10 years, which was, prepared with the aim of rationalizing the ministries and cutting down the cost of governance. What has happened to that? The Auditor General's report on how people have been managing finances, what has happened to it?
To them, we've been having Auditor General's reports since 20.
Yes. I mean, these are accountability issues. It comes back to the issue of the moral question that you raised about when you collect this money from people. What exactly, how accountable are you?
Yes.
Those issues are there.
So you don't think government is accountable?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, you have the Auditor General's report, year 1, year 2, year 3. There is no concrete implementation or sanction or consequences.
Dr. Yusuf, the administration of this thing, of taxes, is also another issue. Which agency collects what tax? Remember the issue of VAT. Cases are still in court from state governments about collection of VAT and all that. Now, we have been told expressly that this one is going to be administered by the Customs Service. How is that going to work? Is it that they collect from the manufacturers?
Yes, you see, this particular tax, this excise tax, is under the Customs and Excise Act. So it's going to be managed by the Customs Service. And what the Customs does, sometimes they even station people at the premises of these companies.
Manufacturers.
Yes. Because the excise tax is not a tax on even your profit. It's a tax on everything that you produce. So whether you are making profit or not,
you are paying
it, which makes it even more painful. And you know what the customs are, with due respect. This is an opportunity for them to now go into factories, whether you are producing chocolate, all this milk, yogurt, all this, they will invade everywhere and begin to harass the manufacturers. That's another issue that we are not talking about. Because they say, yes, you have this, then you now run into the issue of how much did you produce, how much tax, how much sugar is there, is it carbonated, is it not carbonated? And you create all sorts of problems for manufacturers.
Now,
do we need all of that at this time?
Well, Dr. Yusuf, this is where we are now. It's already a law. It will be implemented. The question now is, as a private sector practitioner, what would be your recommendation on how the private sector, the organized private sector, engages government for the implementation of this, so some of these issues that you are raising do not arise?
No, you see, the position of the private sector, which also is supported by Labour, is for this tax to be reversed. If that does not happen, of course you don't have a choice. You have to go back to the drawing board, review your business model. If you have to cut down your production, so be it. If you have to increase prices, so be it. If the consumers are resisting, you have a lot of options within the context of your business strategy. So that is what the investors will be doing now. But whether that is also good for the economy, it's a different matter. Because you are managing an economy for the sake of the people and for the sake also of investment. Where will an economy be if you don't have investors? So it is the interest of the government and everybody to ensure that you create an environment that is conducive for investors. A win-win. We are not saying that investors should not pay tax, but you should not strangulate them. I read out the list of taxes to you. How many countries in the world have that kind of number of taxes? I'm not saying that everybody pays all those taxes, but many companies pay at least 50% of that. And on top of that, for every regulator that is regulating you, there's an amount you pay. Registration fee, licensing fee, renewal fees, and all of that. All those things are there. So government has a responsibility. If you really want to grow this economy, if you really want to lift 100 million people out of poverty, to be more sensitive to the plight of investors, particularly those who are in the real sector, because the pressure is heavy enough. If you cannot lift the pressure, if you cannot relieve the pressure, don't add to it. That is the point. But of course, engagement is a continuous thing. The manufacturers are engaging. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce is engaging. NASIMA, NECA, it's a continuous thing.
Okay. Mr. Ogunbero, the reason that government gave for introducing this tax is majorly for health reasons, for the health of Nigerians. I'm sure there are more developed countries that have obesity problems, a lot more than Nigeria has, that has issues of diabetes. You know, the numbers would probably be a lot, larger than the numbers in Nigeria. And they have not introduced a sugar tax. So how genuine do you think government is when it comes to this concern about the health of its citizens, which they gave as the main reason for this tax?
Definitely, prevention is better than cure. So we can give it to them on the assumption to say that they really meant well. So but let's now interrogate that particular point deeper. To what extent will imposition of 5 naira on a bottle of pep discourage consumption if the guy also does not have a choice? Now, when we started this discussion, I listened to the comment that you have about going to the farm. Let me give you a very good example. I am from the northern part of Oyo State. And in December, I traveled home to visit my parents. And because as a Yoruba man, you just want to relax during the period. So my mother knows that I will eat pounded yam during the period. My mother needed to send to Ibadan to buy yam for us to prepare pounded yam in the place that is regarded as food basket of Oyo State.
Wow.
The prices of food has gone so high that the farmers have finished selling everything they have. They've never experienced that kind of inflation before. So they've sold up practically everything they had. Anytime I travel home that way, they give me yam as gifts. Not a single person offered me a tuber of yam. Not one. Now, where am I coming to? Governments seem to be looking at this drink as if it is a luxury. It is more of a necessity. People need this drink. People drink this thing because they don't have a choice. Yeah. Like I said, you can go to any booker with 300 naira and have a decent meal. But with 300 naira and pep on your side and sausage, most of these low-income earners, they are done for most part of the day. So if government really cares about their health, it's actually to make alternatives available. I do not think that for a man that is already down and do not have a choice, he still needs to hit. He is still going to hit what he can afford, which is what is the lowest in the market. And most likely they will still go for this. So I don't think this is going to solve the problem they intend to. That's my view. Okay. And let us also take note to say that, okay, they really want to address the issue of obesity and diabetes. How good are our hospitals? What is the level of investment that has been done into the hospital? How accessible are medical facilities to anybody? Recently brought somebody to Lagos for medical treatment from the village. We contributed over 3.5 billion naira. This guy cannot even afford, he's a retiree. We have to be looking for money all over the place to get it. So the medical facilities are not even available. The fuel that is available is choked. The number of people they need to serve is unbelievable. So I think governments are just taking the easy way out and giving us a very good reason for which they need to collect this additional tax. But like I said, the jury is out. Let's see how it plays out.
Your last word, Mr. Ogunbero, in 20 seconds. What will be your counsel to government? What will be your counsel to the private sector?
Okay, I think my advice to government is very simple. Tax is a very serious matter. It plays significant role in determining whether an entrepreneur will make an investment or not. And it is investment that generates employment. We are currently at the lowest of net investment. Mm-hmm. If government needs to introduce any tax, there should be a minimum lag period of 3 to 5 years to enable the entrepreneur. Go back to our tax philosophy. We already have it. Let's have a tax philosophy that's going to last for a period of time, whereby investor can plan for maybe 10 to 15 years, and we stick to that philosophy. And if any tax is to be introduced, there should be a lag period by which you introduce it, and people need to make necessary adjustments. These doing it all of a sudden and a knee-jerk approach is not going to help anybody.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Yusuf, last
last
words.
word.
Yes, I think first of all is to advise that we are talking about health. We should focus a lot more on health insurance.
Okay.
A lot of Nigerians are paying out of pocket, and it's extremely painful.
Okay.
It's extremely difficult.
Okay. Dr.
We should
Muda
be looking
Yusuf.
at that, and also better engagement, especially by the National Assembly.
Okay.
It's not every bill that comes that they be passing. They should engage with the people.
Okay. Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. And we also had joining us virtually, Mr. Tayo Ogbenro, Partner, Tax, Regulatory and People Services, KPMG, Nigeria. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this morning and looking at this very important issue with us. Sunrise will return in just a moment. Stay put.